Hello everyone. I chose a former student of mine named Osama because he is one of the most motivated students I have ever had in the 10 years of teaching ESL. I did some research for my capstone project last session, and I found out a lot about what can get a student motivated. However, as a bit of a background interest for me in this particular project, for the case study for this particular class, I was interested to know where this particular student got his motivation, because I've only known him as a motivated student. It could be said that he is nearly the perfect student simply because of his pre-existing motivation. And by perfect student, I simply mean that he has the will to do what it takes in order to learn. Osama was born in Saudi Arabia. He's about 25 years old. He told me that his parents read from the Quran, and I think the second, maybe equally formative aspect of his literate upbringing was that his family would sit around on a weekly basis and listen to the parents tell stories. He didn't really get into his English education until he was in junior high, and when he came to my IEP, as I said before, he's a highly motivated individual. I asked him what was most beneficial to him, which classes or activities were the most beneficial to him, and he said that the international community in the classroom and outside of the classroom were beneficial because he could then practice exactly what he had just learned, which is vastly different from an EFL situation, so we can see the benefit there, and so did Osama for that matter. And he also put a lot of effort into his what we call the guided research paper, which is a short 7 to 10 page paper teaching the students the finer points of citation and paraphrasing and research in general. Osama is a senior in business management, so he's just about finished with his education, or at least his undergrad education. I don't think he's quite sure yet what the next step is. I do know that he is enjoying himself so much that he's trying to find a way to extend his studies, maybe taking one fewer class so he can extend it into another semester. Much of that might have to do with all the activities that he is involved in. He is involved in educational clubs as well as professional clubs. And one more thing of import to his background is that he graduated from our IEP about 2.5 years ago. He came with some credits to continue his undergrad education. If there's one thing that would be obvious if you were to hear any of Osama speaking, it would be that he is a fast speaker. I believe this to be indicative of his thought process, his excitement with exploring new ideas, his intellectual capacity. However, this leads to some negative aspects of his pronunciation. And it should be said here, in using the Solem rubric to identify specific weak areas for Osama to work on, I found there to be quite a bit of overlap in 4 of these categories. I gave him a 5 in comprehension because there were simply, well, maybe with the with the exception of a few idioms that I ended up using, there really was no pause in his response to my questions, and there was maybe 1 or 2 times in our 50-minute conversation that he was that he needed a little help. But in terms of speaking, as I said before, there are 4 categories, as you can see on the screen, that to me seemed like there was a lot of overlap. And you can see the scores were bumped down for fluency. Vocabulary and pronunciation were all 4.5, and the grammar was a 4. Now, Osama is aware of his high rate of speed. He told me about some of the friends that he has who frequently tell him to slow down. So he is constantly reminded of this aspect of his speaking and how it might negatively affect the message he is trying to communicate at times. But I really do think that someone even beyond just the sympathetic ear, who has a sympathetic ear, would be able to understand him very easily in spite of accent and the high rate of speech. But again, he's got a very friendly demeanor, which would make anyone comfortable just asking him to slow down or repeat something, and he will happily do this. The reason that I put vocabulary at 4.5 and why I see, at least in the speaking proficiency, a deficiency is that the fact that he does speak so loudly, or sorry, so quickly, is that he often is unclear in the endings of words, so it leads me to believe there might be some mistakes, but again, the rate of speech is so fast it's difficult to know. In terms of the pronunciation, those 2 things I've kind of given some background so you can kind of understand how it would affect the overall pronunciation. In terms of grammar, yes, I understand that there is, this is pretty much a separate category, but again, I can't really separate it completely from the umbrella term of pronunciation and all that entails. There are noticeable errors when it comes to a couple of issues like final S's. Typically that would be on verbs rather than plural nouns. And then there is the noun clause word order, which is a very common mistake that English language, second language learners have. So it's just important to know that these grammar mistakes are completely forgivable. To even the less than sympathetic ear, the message is clear, and so these are the reasons for these scores. As I've already indicated, Osama is very keen on getting his message out, and his high rate of fluency in speaking also lead, I see some connections between that and the high rate of fluency in his writing. Obviously, he can get his ideas out. He wrote 3 full pages for me in about 45 minutes, but he spent very little time on the planning stages. He did edit as he went, and I'm fine with that given his advanced knowledge of English. I mean, that's certainly how I write. I'll write a paragraph and then go back and fine-tune it a little bit before going on. But my fear for all ESL students is that in doing this, they will lose their train of thought, they will lose their idea, and then that causes disruption in the ideas when a student gets a little bit too caught up in the technicalities of the language in an early stage of drafting. As I like to do in all my writing classes, I gave Osama 7 different prompts, and he chose a topic that was close to his, well, he had background knowledge in this, which of course is important. And the topic was, the prompt was, write a letter to a friend who is thinking about moving to the United States to study. Tell about the process people go through in order to adapt their lifestyles after moving to a new country. Now, I believe, as I've said from the very beginning, that he has a high degree of motivation, so this topic was obviously close to his heart, and he had a lot to say about this and advice to give this person he was writing to. So he chose this topic because he felt comfortable writing about it, and I wanted to get the best of his ideas in that short time. So I'm glad that he chose this particular topic, because he did not struggle for ideas. He had some very strong transitions that indicate cohesion of thought in both oral and written forms. He demonstrates these transitions clearly to the listener when he is speaking, and then in his writing, with the exception of maybe one paragraph transition, his transitions were very clear and logical to keep his ideas together, and this is very much present in his speaking. When after I looked over the paper, I met up with him again, and it was apparent that all Osama needs is just a little bit more time, and that's what I try to stress with all my students. But I believe that his take-home essays are probably of high quality if he is taking the time to draft and then walk away for 12 to 24 hours and then maybe have somebody look at it. But even if nobody else looks at it, I believe that he has the ability to catch his mistakes, because his receptivity to the ideas of metacognition are very high. I chose an article that was about the myths, well actually the title is The Myths of Multitasking, and I related that, or integrated that with some of the ideas of from Bloom's taxonomy. Also, if you look at page 324, you will see the steps that prepare students to work in response groups. I adapted that a little bit, and you can take a look at that as follows. This is kind of a wide-reaching or far-reaching lesson plan, and it did take us quite a while to get through it, but if anybody is interested in taking a look at it, then please get in touch with me. I'd love some feedback on it, maybe as a way to, as a method of streamlining it. But the overarching goals were definitely met, I believe, and that especially was helped by using the response group framework as a guide. While Osama is a extremely motivated individual, as I've been saying for the last 15 minutes or 13 and a half minutes, I wanted to try my hand at a new emphasis in motivation for future lessons, for future students, future advanced students. Granted, this lesson is extremely advanced. I could probably teach it to my upper level IEP students with a little bit more time, but in any case, I was able to motivate him by integrating the issues of reading with higher order thinking. Using Bloom's taxonomy, I was able to elicit responses that helped Osama see the connection with his current status as a student, as well as his future status as a business leader. I was particularly happy with the way this turned out. But again, I am interested to try this out in a bigger, try it out again in a bigger group, so I can see how effective it is and what other changes it might need. I'm hoping to get a little feedback from any of you out there. But thank you very much, and enjoy your holiday.